Today I had the real pleasure of meeting with Anna Moore and Jen Longdon from Pollinate in the Pollinate offices in the middle of the city, and we talked about Pollinate's idea to roll out a new people network within the fintech industry. Really the concept behind this is that they want to bring together a group of like-minded HR and people leaders to innovate, to talk about ways that they can engage with their teams and really to create a working group for the industry. Jen, Anna, thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have both of you, and you know, two of you together. What a joy for us. But look, I think first of all, it'd be great to understand a little bit about the Pollinate story today, and kind of talk about where the business is going now, if that's all right.
Yeah. So Pollinate. I was very fortunate to join Pollinate just over 4 years ago, when it literally was sort of 15 people in a room working out what to do. Very unusual for them to take on a sort of people director at that stage, but the founder Al is incredibly people centric, and it was really important to him. And the Pollinate is a fintech, and the vision originally was to help the banks across the world restore their relationship with merchants, with their small, medium-sized businesses. And that was the owner's original idea. That has grown and morphed, as all good businesses do. And really, where we are now, we have a current merchant acquiring proposition that we have launched with NatWest in the UK, Till by NatWest. And then we are now taking our product globally. So we've already signed it. We're working with Australia, National Australia Bank and CIBC in Canada. And we are also looking at other sort of marketplace applications for our product. So it's a really exciting area, not a field I knew at all when I joined. I have retail running right through me, so it was really interesting. But I think what's been interesting about our journey as a people team is we were able to really build greenfield right from scratch. So to really say, what do we need? But we also grew very organically. It sounds all very lovely and strategic when I put it like that. It really wasn't. Anyone that's worked in a startup will know that it's all hands to the pump. But I think that's good, and I think we're now at a really interesting inflection point from a people perspective, where we need to a lot of people have been with us now for 3 or 4 years, so that they are looking at what's my development within Pollinate. That allied with, as you will know, Luke, the market in the situation it is now, particularly for the tech world, has real challenges for us. But it's a really exciting time, because as we've absolutely moved from startup to scale up. Yeah. I think it's a really good point to really evaluate what do we do with our people practices and what do we do with our people.
Of course, yeah. And I think that's an interesting point that you make about the scale up challenge. The war on talent is obviously, you know, everybody in the industry is feeling the pain of that right now. How are you guys planning to kind of position yourselves as different to your competition when it comes to attracting talent into the business?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to recognise you can't compete. It is a mad world out there at the moment, and the war for the talent piece is what keeps me awake at night at the moment. But I think you have to be realistic. You know, we've got some fairly junior roles where we might have a developer, for example, paid, I don't know, £75,000, who is literally being offered to over 200,000 to go to another business and a sign-on bonus. You have to recognise in that world you can't compete. It's just, but what you hope to do, and what Jen and I work very hard at, is you hope to build a culture where people realise it's not just that you're not just leaving the financial package, you're also leaving a great culture, and you know you're leaving that. But it's not easy, and you know I get it. At a time when we've got cost of living increases, wars, everything else, the financial piece is a huge draw.
Yeah. I'd also say one of the issues that we do have with development is because of the speed of delivery, and it's not just us, it's anyone who has a product, the expectation to ship it. And it feels like it's got faster since the pandemic.
Yeah.
There's more of a rush to get things out. And that leaves little time for people to develop too. So, we're there saying, no, you've got to prioritise your development. And I think as a people team, we really do have words with people and try and encourage them as much as we can to develop and never stop developing.
Yeah.
And we provide tools to enable that. And we do lots of things to help them, but we're quite clear.
The funny bit as well, I've read about this, but we're actually seeing it in reality now, is we're getting people back as well. I think there's this whole piece about people leave and think that the grass is always greener on the other side. And actually they go for something and then realise actually what I had was really good. So we've already got an example, one of our development leads who was with us and has left, and she's coming back.
Right.
So it is interesting.
The grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
But look, it's an opportunity for HR professionals, right? Because I think, like you say, it all comes down to the culture. And I know in my experience, often people are reluctant to leave places of work when they feel connected to the business or the people in it, right? And I know in our previous conversation, you guys talked about your learning month. Tell us about that. That would be really interesting to hear about.
Well, it all started with a collaboration session. I think it was a Friday, and you were driving to see your mum, and you just had a spare hour. And Anna was just in this crazy mood, and we just yes-anded each other's ideas, and we just came up with a programme of a month's events. And we just apologised. We thought we'd apologise later. We programmed all these events, mainly in the lunch hour, some in the evening, different activities.
And we did this, it's really interesting, because when you work in a startup and be with tech people, as Jen's alluded to, they just don't prioritise their development. You never will in a startup. So I was a little bit suspect about, do we do this focus? But actually it was absolutely the right thing to do, because everyone said, okay, during that month, I'll do. And I was also, I have to be honest, Jen really had a battle, because I was also slightly cynical, because quite a lot of the sessions were run by our own people for our people, and I was a bit like, is anyone really going to want to listen to, I don't know, one of the data scientists talking about data? But they were the best sessions. Interestingly.
And I think also I had done a cultural analysis with Anna in November time, and one of the key findings we found was that the pandemic had meant that the teams weren't connected across so well, so the knowledge transfer had been less. So we wanted an opportunity with the internal sessions. And probably, yes, it was a bit too heavy, and that's why Anna was like, oh, are we sure we're doing the right thing? But I knew the knowledge share was an opportunity for us. And I think it also added to people's purpose to come back to the office after working from home for so long. And, the technology departments are always, we're better at home. But actually, they did come in for these events, and they're here more.
And it was relatively low cost as well, which was interesting for me. So we didn't, we had one more expensive external speaker, but we used the resources around us. So we also have a really strong advisory board full of the good and great that advise on fintech, including government figures and everything else. And it was amazing. I thought, well, will they want to come and talk to Pollinate? But actually, they were desperate to come and get to, because it was also an opportunity for them to come in and get to know our people a bit better. So when they sat in the advisory board, they could then say, oh yes, well, I know what's going. So we had Simon Jones, one of our advisory board, come to do a piece on branding, the story of you, which was brilliant, because people were just really engaged in how do I tell my own story. It's all about storytelling, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah. And it's culminated in an award for you guys, right? The HR Function of the Year award. So. It
did. We're not very good at showing off about that. In fact, I think, Luke, we forgot to tell you about that until this morning. But yes, so we were really. I always say to anyone that comes into either wants a career in HR or people, don't go into this career if you're looking to get kudos, and because you just don't. It is fairly thankless at times. And I think what was lovely, we made a decision last year, it was our sort of second year as a whole team, that we ought to try and see if we could get some recognition. So we applied for the award, But then what was great was it involved the company getting feedback from suppliers that had worked with us, from the executive and board team, etc. And we were absolutely thrilled. What's the slightly embarrassing story within it is that, as with all these awards, they came up with there's obviously a dinner where they announce all the winners and everything, but you obviously pay for a table as a business. And we were at a time when, like lots of people, small companies. When this came through, I sort of spoke to the team and they said, oh no, it's fine. And I said, look, we'll go out for a dinner ourselves at some point, but I'm not intending, I don't think we'll get through. And I genuinely didn't think we'd win.
None of us
So we
did.
didn't go to the dinner. And then of course that night we were contacted on Twitter and everything saying, you've won the award. And we were like, oh my goodness. So learning next time I will be going to every award dinner you will
Always
see
take
me
that
at
opportunity,
now.
yeah.
And then when we did come round to celebrate, Omicron came round and prevented us.
Yeah, it did,
We
it
couldn't
did,
celebrate
it
for
did.
once.
Well, there's always belated celebration opportunities, right? And look, I think one of the key things that I got the impression of from talking to you guys previously was your passion for what you do, right? And your passion for building the culture in the right way. And I suppose the question that kind of occurred to me off the back of that is, you can always have a business mission which is slightly interchangeable, right? But where would you put business mission versus company culture in terms of priorities, and how do you think those two things align to one another?
I do think it's our values. We have a set of values: collective, energising, and journey, which is born from Aikido principles,
Right.
Which is a Japanese martial art.
Of course, yeah.
And journey is probably the one that ties in with the business mission, that we have to be adaptable. This is a journey. You're here for your own personal journey, and we're here to coach you through that. But we're also here together as a collective on our own journey. And it allows us to sort of take those stresses and those twists and turns and come together and know that it is a journey. You're part of that journey.
Yeah.
And Al is very good at setting that tone regularly, actually.
Yeah, he is. He is. And I think it's a really interesting question you asked, Luke, because I think, and I know this is written about a lot, but we don't get it all right. We also had the posters on the wall that talk about the values, but I don't think one of the things we've done quite, we were very fortunate because Jen was doing a qualification where she needed to do some research, but I think you have to test, are those values that are on the wall, is that actually what it's like to work around here or not? And we did a really big piece of work sort of trying to validate that.
Right.
And I think the interesting point for me was it was fairly spot on. Some of the wording wasn't quite right. We've talked about this. The founder was very keen on this Japanese martial art, Aikido. Some of that didn't resonate with people, but actually when you took it down to brass tacks of we work collectively and that's really important cross-functionally, we are energising, but we expect people to be enthusiastic about our product and to their energy to be infectious. But it is a journey. It is literally, and we all know this, you have days where you think you have your nice long to-do list, you take one step forward and then you literally take six steps back. And if you can't cope with that, and we're beginning to learn this with our recruitment, you can have all the technical skills you like, you can be the best architect in the world, but if you can't cope with that journey, that ambiguity, that stepping back and stepping forward, you just won't succeed in here at all. So the cultural fit is really, really important.
Of course. I think ambiguity is synonymous with any business that's growing, right? And you have to be able to deal with that, I suppose. And we definitely test for that a lot when we're looking at potential candidates for the industry, especially people that are coming out of big businesses, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll never forget, about 2 years ago, I interviewed a chief architect with our CTO at the time. And it was this amazing interview. And the guy was just, what he didn't know about architecture, he literally had a long forehead, what he didn't know about architecture just wasn't worth knowing at all. And he knew our platform, our data, but we finished the interview, the candidate left, and the CTO and I just looked at each other and went, no way. And it was nothing to do with the technical side. It was just the fact he was very asking us loads of questions about where did the job start and end, how big was his team, what exactly would he be doing, and we were just a bit like, in this environment you're going to last about 5 minutes, because anybody that works in this sort of environment knows whatever function you're in, you have to be strategic at one end, but you also have to get your hands dirty. I mean, in our world it's doing payroll and pay query, you have to do the full gamut of the range, and if you're worried about where your role ends and another person's begins.
It's funny because I actually think the culture is not a set of values in a way. I think that's how we're used to talking about values. They're words, but actually they're behaviours. And we ask people to come in and be themselves, but align to these behaviours. And they're such positive behaviours that they sort of pick up on each other, they support each other, they make each other feel safe, and that filters across the whole organisation. And that's how the leadership make you feel, and it just keeps reinforcing itself. So it makes it easier to manage any change. But that doesn't mean to say that change isn't difficult.
Of course. And you guys make it sound very easy, I have to say.
It's not, believe me. And we don't get it right. There's times when we don't go. I think what's interesting from a cultural perspective is you almost deselect yourself. So what deselect yourself? By that I mean, it's very stark in here. If someone does something that's counterculture, people pick up on it really, really quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we, I'm not saying we always deal with it in the right way, but we are very firm on that now.
Yeah. Well, it's the best thing that can possibly happen, right? I think, talking about something that I'm very passionate about in the football world, Alex Ferguson ran Manchester United so successfully for so many years and talks about the fact that he was never in the changing room. And actually it was the players coming in, learning from the players that were already there, and that's how they kept that culture going, right? Which it's so important. And so when you look at the broader fintech industry right now, and I suppose where we are as an industry in terms of growth and development, what role do you think people functions can play in creating a new, innovative, exciting space for talent to come into?
So the issue you have in fintech is, as I alluded to, it's so fast-paced, it's moving with such a pace, you're building a team so quickly that you become, and we recognised about a year ago that we had become very much as a team very internally focused, because it's all about, for want of a better word, bums on seats, talent pipeline, checking you're doing things correctly, mental health, all those lovely initiatives, but you become very, very internally focused. What I think we could do a lot better as an industry, and we're really keen to try and spearhead this, is to share our knowledge and take the industry forward together. Right. So I think what we've talked about, we really want to launch and grow what we're calling a people network, where actually we get like-minded people for a bit of the bit that everyone loves, which is, I'm finding this really difficult, and then someone else goes, oh, so am I, and you're just like, oh, thank goodness for that, it's not just us. But also, I think there's real strength in numbers, and there's real strength in ideas, and actually there's areas where I think we can borrow with pride massively. So that's something we're really keen to do. Would you?
Yeah, and set the standard, because when I first came in, one of the tasks that Anna asked me to do was the family policies. Right. And it was so difficult to get information from anybody. And I thought, well, hang on, I'm in this together. This is a new industry. We really want to support each other and everyone talks about women not being in technology roles. Well, this is our opportunity to set the direction together. But we got there and we did some innovative policies and principles in our offering. I'm quite proud of it. There's definitely more that we can do, and I think we can build that across the industry together. Right. But also, I see an opportunity in neurodiversity. So recently we had someone come in and speak, an external speaker around neurodiversity, she thinks that in fintech as an industry, there's a lot of creatives. There's a lot of people who are CEOs who might have some neurodiversity themselves because they like to go around problems and in innovative ways, and technologists themselves. So there's a group of people all working together that probably have quite a lot of neurodiversity.
Yeah.
So it's a real green field site for us to go in and influence together with an alliance of other contacts in HR and people teams.
Yeah.
And change the world basically.
Yeah. And it's tough. By the nature of fintech, a lot of us are working with banks, and even our founder would say, as a member of the executive team, it's hard work working with banks, because what we're trying to do in people is very, very different. So traditionally, in some of the traditional banks, your HR structure is very traditional. There's lots of processes. There's loads of governance.
Yeah.
I always remember, our banks look to how we recruit and go, oh my goodness, if only we didn't have to go through 7 approval processes before we bring someone on board. But I think also, if we join together in a bit more of a network, we can share some of those practices, and I think really help the banks as well.
I agree, yeah.
With what they're trying to do, and really shorten some of that.
I think it's a really interesting and fascinating concept, and I truly believe in what you're trying to do there. I think it's a fantastic idea and much needed. I can see it really resonating with a lot of people across the industry. And where are you kind of at with this at the moment? Are you hosting regular events?
So we've set up. We've met quarterly with a small group of people. But what we'd really like to do is broaden that somewhat. But what we found is, obviously during the pandemic, it had to be virtual. But you're sitting in part of our office now in Broad Street. We would like to get a group of like-minded people together, and we're happy that everyone sets the agenda. We just have. Not for a long time, but we have a meeting where we're clear which pieces do we want to cover. But even not just being about a meeting, being outside that, you've got somebody on email that you can just say, oh, when are you returning to the office? How many days are people typically do? Just ask a simple question. So if anyone's interested, do give Jen or myself a shout, because we'd really love to include them.
I think it sounds like a great idea. Well, look, we'll be certain to talk to our own network about that as well. And look, thanks for your time today, guys. I think we're obviously wrapping up the conversation there. But before we finish, there's one quick question that I would like to ask the both of you, which is, so what do you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career?
I'm going to pass that to Jen first, because I do know what I want to say. But
yeah, okay. So for me, I wish I knew that the best way to work in HR is to say yes. So when I first started, it was the fear of, well, here's a policy, one must follow the guidance, what does that line manager want to do? Oh my God, no. But actually, when you say yes, even though you're really saying no, you're saying, yes, I'm here, I'm listening to you. What is it that how can I help you? And it just changes the conversation, and then that way they trust you, that you can guide them. Whereas I think I spent a lot of time in my early days of my career worrying if I was getting it right.
Right.
Really good answer. Yeah. Really good answer. Okay, mine was a bit more generic than that. I think I sort of went a bit down the sort of mental health theme, just about, I wish I knew it's going to be okay. Because I think particularly I've noticed during the pandemic, in a people function, we have taken a lot of the stress and ills from people. And at times that's really draining. And I think we've all experienced days where we've just felt, oh gosh, can I do this anymore? But I think the thing, and maybe it's more of a life lesson for me, but I think I was always told when I had one of my children that everything's a phase, and it's so true that you might have a bit of a tough bit, and it might seem like everything you're dealing with that day is quite hard work, but tomorrow's another day, and it's always going to be okay. And if you have a great team around you, which we're very fortunate we do, and if you have different perspectives, you can use those people to sort of get you through.
Amazing. Well, what a lovely way to end, right? Thank you both very much for your time. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.